Welcome to Kids Talk Church History, a one-of-a-kind podcast where kids investigate the history of the church. Over 2,000 years ago, Jesus said, "I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." So, has he kept his promise? How has Jesus built and preserved his church against all odds? Come with us on a trip through history to find the answer, here on Kids Talk Church History. On Easter Day in 1655, the Duke of Savoy in northeast Italy sent his troops to attack a group of Protestants known as the Waldensians. Within hours, homes were burned, and men, women, and children were brutally killed, captured, and tortured. The captives were taken to prisons where they continued to be tortured and deprived in an effort to convert them. The children were sent to Roman Catholic families to be raised in their religion. Only a few managed to flee. Who were these tough mountain people who challenged the Duke, and did they ever gain religious freedom? Stay tuned for another exciting episode of Kids Talk Church History to learn more. I'm Emma. I'm 17, and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina.
I'm Christian. I'm 15, and I live in Charleston, South Carolina.
And I'm Linus. I'm 14, and I live in San Diego, California.
So who were these Waldensians?
Well, we have a guest who can tell us more about them later, but I know that they started in the 12th century and survived through a long history of persecutions. They officially joined the Protestant Reformation in 1532. In January 1655, a few months before the attack, they were formally ordered to attend Mass or move further up in the mountains. Being winter, the Duke thought that they would choose the first alternative, but they didn't. Most men moved to a location further up the Alps, preparing a place for their families. And that's when the Duke sent his troops to attack them.
It really seems so cruel for the Duke to force them up to move up the mountains in winter. And why did he even care if they even went to Mass?
Well, the Duke, who ruled the land, was a strong Roman Catholic, and at that time, rulers could impose their religion on the people. They thought it would help a country to be united. Plus, I think he and the Pope were allies.
Well, what happened after the attack?
When the Duke's troops moved on to attack the rest of the valleys, a man named Joshua Janavel organized a resistance to defend his village. With only 17 men, he used his knowledge of the area to fend off the troops. It was only a temporary victory because the Duke sent thousands of men. Knowing that Janavel had no chances to win, the Duke sent him an ultimatum. If he refused to surrender, his wife and daughters, who had been captured, would be tortured and imprisoned.
That's a very difficult decision.
Yes, because there was no guarantee that the Duke would actually spare his family if he surrendered. So he left the country together with a son who had stayed by his side and planned to continue the fight.
Wow, I don't even know what I would have done if I was put into a situation like that.
Yeah, I think he knew his wife and daughters were strong in the faith and would have approved of his decision.
Did he keep on fighting?
He continued to plan to find a way to get religious freedom for his people. In fact, a Waldensian pastor, Jean Leger, had already crossed the Alps with his wife and 11 children and was raising support. What happened later is known as the Glorious Return. But we need to let our guest, Italian author Erica Scroppo, tell us more about this exciting story. Dr. Scroppo is executive secretary of the Waldensian Church Mission and knows a lot about the history of the Waldensians. Dr. Scroppo, we are so excited to talk to you today.
I think you are fantastic. Thank you very much. So what was the question? So what I wanted to start with was that they all, Janavel and the others, went to Switzerland because it was a Protestant country that was ready to host them. But later on, they had lots of problems because they were not terribly excited about these naughty people who Waldensians wanted to fight and go back to their countries. They were very, very attached to their places. Like the Huguenots were more bourgeois, middle class, so they could find jobs everywhere. The Waldensians were peasants. They were attached to their land, to their farms, so they wanted to go back to their houses and things. But the thing is, they had to go to Switzerland, and it wasn't easy to walk. The mountains are mountains, even in winter, they are cold, but high mountains are different. And they went to Switzerland where, and many went then also to Germany. So there were lots of dispersed. How to say anyway? They were dispersed in different places. But Janavel was always of the idea of going back. But that was 1655, while the glorious return was much later, sort of. The 1655 was also connected to other countries, and then was the first time where Cromwell, who was in England, sent an ultimatum. Sorry for my accent, but I'm Italian, despite being here for a long time. To say, stop this or we'll attack you. So that was something big, because England wasn't huge as it became later, but it was a big power. And so that was the name of the Pasque Piemontesi, Piemontesistas. And so there was an involvement also of other European countries to stop this massacre. But there, exactly.
Well, could you tell us a little bit about who the Waldensians were to start with? Like,
Yes, very quickly. That's again, 850 years is a bit long, but they started with somebody called Valdo, or all the names they want to give, Waldo or Valdez or whatever, who was a rich merchant, very similar story to San Francis, who 50 years later, or 45, who apparently had a mother from Lyon, who might have been a Waldensian, who knows. Anyway, he was rich and had a beautiful life, and then suddenly a friend of his apparently died, and then he felt terrible and started thinking that something was wrong with his life, read the Bible, decided to sell all his property, gave something obviously to wife and children, and then became a poor and went around preaching the gospel and telling people to do what he was doing. The big problem with Valdo, because he had several communication and went even to Rome a couple of times, was that he wasn't a priest, and he wanted to preach. And that was his big thing. That's why he was persecuted. But St. Francis was just good and pious and did good things, but didn't preach, despite he could have done it. Valdo wanted to have the freedom of reading the Bible and preaching it. So that was the problem. Other people had done it, other people did it, several other, that in various countries, but the only one who really survived so far were the Waldensians. And as you said, in 1532, they joined the Reformation of Geneva. That's why they were connected. And they became normal Protestants. So I can join your other question, which was that what do they do now? What is the Waldensian Church now? Is that another question you had?
I think we're going to ask that a little bit later.
Okay.
But I
Yeah.
think Christian has a question.
I think before we even look to the Waldensian Church, can you give us a little explanation of what happened to Janavel's wife and daughters?
I don't think I know. I looked around in the books I have. I think they were just kept prisoners, and maybe they died there as so many others. They were not the only of them. But I can't. I have to ask. And I was looking for different books, but I couldn't find. But I can ask the Waldensian Society in Torre Pellice. But I just look at the new book, which there is a new book in 4 different things, each of them 800 pages, so I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, that would be great if we could learn that answer and we can go on through that journey to find the answer. So we talked a little bit about the glorious return. It was like basically a long march throughout Europe, right? Or specifically about the glorious return. Can you explain more? What was it about?
Yeah, it was something that Janavel had always thought would have to happen, but they had to wait for the right time. And again, there was lots of connection to European princes and other people, included William of Orange, who was and became William of the Third of England, and so he was fighting his battles, and the Waldensians were allies. Sorry. So what happened was that some people said, "Oh, come on, it's okay, don't do it." Not everyone wanted to carry on fighting, but about 1,000 people decided it was a good idea. But Janavel was too old, and so the leader was pastor, no, who was a pastor. He was already a pastor when he started. He had been a pastor in Angronia, I think, in the valleys. You must go one day and have a trip and find all these wonderful historical places. They're still there. So you can see the places where they, even the Reformation and so on. Anyway, and so Arnaud decided to lead them, and they left from near Geneva. And it wasn't terribly long. Yeah, I wrote it somewhere. Where was it? Oh, dear. Gosh. It was, there were about nearly 1,000 people. Where did I write it? Sorry. Oh, dear me. Where did I write it? It was about, I don't know, 1,906. I don't know. Not so many anyway. Not so long. If you look, Nyon Torrepellice or Nyon what, you'll find it online. Where did I put that? Because it was so difficult to connect that I lost all my bits and pieces. Oh, where is it? Where is it? No, I'll find it in a second, maybe, hopefully. And it wasn't very long. They left in, you can see? Can you see a bit? You can see it wasn't terribly long. Oop. They started on the 16th or 17th of August. By 27th of August, they were already on the high peaks. But, since there are different valleys and different places, you won't say, they had battles with different people who were looking after the high peaks. And so it took some time before they could say that most places were free. And eventually so I think by the beginning of September, by the way, sorry, many years ago, on an anniversary of 1989, I was doing something for Radio Beckwith, which is a radio that still exists and is very big now, but it was a little one, and I was the first director. And I was looking at all the thing they had written, and I thought, how can it be? It was August and it was freezing, just either ice and snow, because there was a mini glaciation. So the world goes, I don't think there was any pollution then, but the world goes up and down according to whatever the word and God want to do. It's not only us, we are little things, crawling things. We are not so big that we can change everything. So there was this mini glaciation, which made things really difficult. On the other hand, also good, because there was a point when they were all going to be caught, but then suddenly the snow and the fog came, so they managed to survive, which is, it's very, very interesting and very thrilling to read it. But little by little, then eventually they went from the top valley, they arrived near Bobbio Pellice, where you might go and see one day, and they decided to have a big praying together and say we must we must all be together. So they're in memory of that. There is a big monument to remember the unity and so on. And then they decided, little by little, then other places were freed, and eventually the families joined. And they had to start all over again. The churches had, like the churches in Prali, was still up there, but they had changed it into Roman Catholic, so they threw away the images and the things, and they, that was hard days those days. And eventually the place became Waldensian, but there were also some Catholic which were tolerated and left there. So they are still Roman Catholic in the Angronia Valley, and now again everything is mixed. And what I would say, particularly Torre Pellice, which is a little place, it's called the capital of Waldensian, but it's 5,000 people, a bit less than 5,000 actually, and there are so many churches. Waldensian Church, Catholic Church, Adventists. No, I think the Adventists have gone to Luzerna nearby, but then there is the Brethren, or how you call them. Then there are some, different alliance. There is the Salvation Army. I think we counted, there were 7 different places of worship, Christian worship, in a small place like that, which is very similar to other places in America, in England, but not in Italy. So that's, again, still now. So I don't know if I have answered, and but you ask me whatever you want, and I will answer if I know. Otherwise, I will say no, I don't know.
So when would you say like the Waldensians gained their religious freedom?
Okay, so in principle, it was when King Carlo Alberto in 1848, pressured by other liberals, decided that it was the right time, right thing to do. So it was the 17th of February, but the night before that, I mean, it's the celebration is the 17th of February, and I think a couple of days later the Jews. But we have a big bonfire every night on the 16th, because in order to celebrate what had happened, because no mobile phones, no telephones, no nothing, the best thing to let people that there was the freedom at last was a bonfire from one bit of the valley to another bit, one mountain to the other, and it's fantastic. You must go on the 17th of February one night, one time. You're so young, one day you'll go.
What is that celebration called? Is there a name for it?
Emancipation, emancipation. And
So
that was one thing. But then before, oh yes, and then it was, I remember my father, who was born in 1910, remember everything. The first kingdom of Italy was kind of disregarded and looked like heretics by the Pope in Rome, and so the Pope was just hiding inside some Vatican, but the rest of Italy was liberal, and until Mussolini arrived. So Mussolini did a pact. Mussolini was the fascist dictator, a pact with the Pope called how would you call it? Can't remember. Patti Lateranensi, which made them. But the Roman Catholic Church was officially the only church of Italy again. So the Waldensians were also not very well looked at, because they were not very well considered, because they had friends abroad, they were friends of the English, they had lots of friends who were not fascist at all. And so they had not an easy time. And so it took quite a long time. And when the Italian constitution came, which was when Italy became a republic, and after the war, after losing the war, the Italian constitution said one thing in one article and one other thing in the other one. Like the Italian state, every religion is the same, then number two, but the Roman Catholic is better, or is more important. So it took again a long time, until 1984, I think, to be accepted as, in principle, equal. So that's a long time. And I would say, I think you were saying, how are they looked at? How are the Waldensians? I think now the people who know who they are, they consider them well. They are very well considered, but there are very few Waldensian. Also because the Waldensians seem not to want to be counted as many. Like if you're not asking the church to be a member officially, even if you're baptized and go to church, you're not considered a Waldensian. So the fewer the better, apparently. I don't know. That's my opinion. Like my sister's a Waldensian, but has not signed that piece of paper. She's not counted. While the Roman Catholic count everyone who'd been baptized, even if he became anything else after. So the numbers are always a bit different. And but we believe that it's not the numbers that count, but what people believe and do. Anything else?
Yeah. So we have two questions that we ask all of our guests. First off, how did you become interested in church history?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you are a minority like the Waldensian, you become immediately, when you do catechism, which is in my days, you used to do it when you were 12 for 4 years. Everyone tells you, but in the family, they tell you, because you go to school and you are different from the others. So you have to be able to tell people why you are different. And some people were very ashamed or frightened or I don't know, just not very happy about talking about that. I didn't care at all, so I was always able to talk but it wasn't easy because it's a long story. But like, for instance, like my father during the war was ill. I'm talking about 1940 something, and he didn't want to be a soldier because he wasn't very keen on doing the Mussolini's war, but he was there. He was Italian. Anyway, he got ill and was sent to hospital. And he told me that the anti-fascist, people known as anti-fascist, had one guard looking after them in the hospital. He had two guards looking after him because he was a Protestant. And the nuns were not very keen on changing his sheet and everything, because in those days it was mainly nuns who did hospital things. And then years and years later, when it was already after the Constitution, so in the 50s, I did 1 year in Bobbio Pellice or what, I can't remember. Then I was, which was in the valleys, and we were all free to do whatever we wanted to do and believe whatever we wanted to. Then in Turin, there were lots and lots, about 40 plus children, girls in one class, and it was state school, still is. And but the Roman Catholic priest was paid by the state to teach Roman Catholic religion. So when he arrived, the teacher will send me away in the bathroom, which were very cold and freezing in winter, particularly those days, in order not to offend the eyes of the priest. And the priest told my school friends to pray for me because I was destined for hell. And it's true. That was before Vatican, the Council of Vatican II. After that, things, I must say, have changed, and now there is lots of cooperation. And I know the Pope embraced a friend of mine, who was the minister in Palermo, but now he's in Trieste. And the Pope came to the Church of Turin, I think it was 2015, and said, sorry for what we did to you. Even if you can't say honestly sorry for something else, you're not responsible, but that was very good of him. It was very nice. When the Waldensian Church was open in Turin, that was in the 19th century, and it was being paid by the English Beckwith and so on, the bells of many bells of the Catholic bells of Catholic Church, dear me, how do you say? They told like death, that it was something dying because there was a Protestant church opened. And not little later in the same area, the synagogue for the Jews was open. So it was called like the heretic area, which is still in the center of Turin. And it's a beautiful church. It's another place you must go. But as I say, there are some people are still a bit like that, particularly the people who don't attend church in the Catholic Church, who were indoctrinated in the past. But the people who are, go to church and mass and things are much more open now, I must say. Also because their numbers is diminishing like other people as well. So we all think we are Christians. So, but no, your questions are really lovely and interesting, children. You're very good.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Scroppo. We are just delighted that you were able to spend this time with us. And listeners, please keep telling us what you think of these episodes and keep asking questions. We'll pass them on to our guest experts as soon as possible.
Yeah, there was one more thing you were asking me. No, there is no Waldensian Church in Cambridge because wherever we go, we join a Reformed church. So how many Waldensians there are in the world? I have no idea. As I said, the Waldensians try to be very few. And often if they marry, there are places like in America, there is a place called Valdez. Maybe you should get in touch with the American Waldensian Society. Then in South America, there are places where there were, because there were full groups of, let's say, a village went. But, and there was a church, at least there is a church in Geneva, in Bâle, but there were migrants from Italy. There are a few things. But then if you go to a church, if you write to play, also we are integrated with the Methodist in Italy. So when I came here, I looked for the Methodist Church. I didn't go to church for a couple of years because my English I didn't understand very well. But then when the children were a bit older, they joined Sunday school at the Methodist Church. But now we moved to a place where we have just behind us, the end of the garden ends into a churchyard. We have a lovely Anglican church, which is, not, we call it medium, not too high, not too low. And there are people from all over. There are people who came from the Brethren, people who came from the Salvation Army, people, and they are all welcome. And, you are happy to join and all praying the same God.
Yeah. Dr. Scroppo, we are so thankful that you decided to spend this time with us. And listeners, keep telling us what you think of these episodes and keep asking questions. We'll try to pass them on to our guest experts as soon as possible. And we are always having giveaways, so make sure you enter on our website, kidstalkchurchhistory.org. Also, we are approaching the time when all our hosts get together and talk about what we have learned from a particular period of church history, in this case, the 17th century. And we are inviting a listener to join us. So please write and tell us why you would like to be on our podcast, and your name will be entered in this special drawing. In partnership with the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals, and on behalf of my co-hosts, Christian and Linus, I am Emma. Thank you for listening to Kids Talk Church History.